Think about this. Just 50 years ago, most people in China worked the land. Estimates suggest extreme poverty was widespread across the country. Today, China produces close to a third of the world's manufactured goods. It fights trade wars. It competes in space. And it does this under one-party rule. So how did China catch up so fast? And why did it happen in the last few decades? To answer that, we need a longer timeline. We need to start with China's deep history. On the map of early civilizations, Mesopotamia appears about 6,000 years ago. The Indus Valley rises later in today's Pakistan. Egypt flourishes along the Nile. Many early civilizations collapse or fragment. China is different. Its civilization emerges roughly 4,000 years ago. It survives, evolves, and returns to global power. But ancient China was not one country at first. It was a patchwork of states. Unification comes late. In 221 BCE, Qin Shi Huang unites the warring kingdoms. He builds a centralized empire. He standardizes rules, roads, and writing. His tomb is guarded by the Terracotta Army. From then on, dynasties rise and fall. Yet the imperial idea remains. China's territory expands and contracts. Trade grows with the wider world. This is where the Silk Road matters. Chinese silk, tea, and porcelain travel far. Some goods reach as far as Rome. China protects its know-how fiercely. Leakage of key technologies is treated as treason. Foreigners are tightly controlled. Even reaching China is hard. To the west are the Himalayas. To the north is the Gobi Desert. To the south are dense jungles. These natural barriers create insulation. Insulation creates monopoly. And monopoly shapes worldview. A powerful idea takes root. China sees itself as the Middle Kingdom. It sees itself as the center of order. Beyond it lies chaos. Outsiders are treated as barbarians. That attitude lasts for centuries. Then maritime Europe arrives. Portuguese, Spanish, and Dutch ships appear. Later come the British. They concentrate near the southern ports. Guangzhou, also called Canton, becomes the gateway. Foreign factories open there. They are trading posts, not industrial plants. But foreigners are still boxed in. They cannot freely travel inland. They cannot settle broadly. They cannot bring families easily. Trade is also controlled by money. China wants silver. It does not want European goods. Silver matters because China has limited domestic precious metals. In fact, much of the world's silver came from the Americas. Large flows came from places like Mexico and Peru. That silver crosses the Pacific. It passes through Manila and the Philippines. It ends up in China. China exports tea, silk, and porcelain. Europe pays in bullion. This creates a problem for Britain. Britain wants a favorable balance. It wants to sell more than it buys. But China does not want British products, so Britain searches for a lever. It finds one in opium. Opium existed in Asia as medicine, but smoking habits spread fast in the early modern era. A new drug culture emerges. Opium mixed with tobacco becomes popular. Addiction spreads quickly. The British supply intensifies from India. Opium becomes the trade tool. Silver starts flowing out of China. Chinese officials try to stop it. In 1800, bans and crackdowns escalate. Smuggling keeps rising anyway. By the late 1830s, the conflict explodes. In 1839, Chinese authorities seize and destroy large stocks of opium. Britain treats this as an attack on commerce. It sends warships. This is the first Opium War. The military gap is huge. China loses. In 1842, the Treaty of Nanjing is imposed. China pays indemnities. It opens treaty ports. Hong Kong is ceded to Britain. Foreign legal privileges expand. Smuggling becomes easier, not harder. A second conflict follows. In the 1850s, fighting resumes. China loses again. More ports open. Foreign influence deepens. Opium is effectively normalized. The psychological shock is massive. China's old worldview shatters. The barbarians are stronger. The empire enters a long crisis. Later, Chinese memory will name it clearly. It is the century of humiliation. The Qing state weakens. Reform attempts come too late. In 1911, revolution ends the monarchy. The last emperor abdicates, but stability does not arrive. China fragments into warlord rule. Two forces eventually dominate. The nationalists, the Kuomintang, rise. The communists also grow. The communists draw support from peasants. The nationalists control key cities and institutions. Then, Japan attacks. In 1937, full-scale war erupts. Nationalist armies fight major battles. Communist forces wage guerrilla war. Japan's defeat in 1945 ends the external war. It restarts the internal one. Civil war resumes. The nationalists are exhausted and discredited. Corruption and inflation damage their legitimacy. The communists are organized and disciplined. They gain territory. In 1949, Mao Zedong proclaims the People's Republic of China. The nationalists retreat to Taiwan. The Cold War locks in the split. Now China is unified again, but its economy is still poor. Mao begins a socialist transformation. Industry is nationalized. Agriculture is collectivized. Planning replaces markets. The Soviet Union provides early support. Factories and expertise are imported. The goal is rapid industrialization. Then Mao launches the Great Leap Forward. This begins in 1958. Targets are extreme. Steel output becomes a national obsession. Local cadres must deliver results. Backyard furnaces appear across the country. Families melt tools and household metal. Fields lose labor. Harvests suffer. Reported numbers are inflated. Reality is hidden. At the same time, the state launches mass campaigns. One infamous campaign targets sparrows. The logic is simple but flawed. Fewer sparrows means more grain. Millions of birds are killed. Insects then explode in number. Locusts and pests spread. Crop damage worsens. The result is catastrophe. A massive famine follows. Scholars debate the exact death toll. Many estimates range from tens of millions. Policy retreats quietly. Blame is shifted down the chain. China remains largely agrarian for years. Living standards rise slowly. Yet Mao's era is not only failure. The state brings order after decades of war. Basic education expands. Public health campaigns reach villages. Literacy improves. For many peasants, life feels more stable than before. Still, this is not an economic miracle. The turning point comes after Mao. Mao dies in 1976. Power shifts inside the party. A new leader rises in practice. That leader is Deng Xiaoping. Deng is defined by pragmatism. He has a famous line, "It does not matter if the cat is black or white. If it catches mice, it is a good cat." In 1978, a new course begins. Ideological purity loses priority. Results become the metric. The first big change hits agriculture. Peasants begin dividing communal land in practice. Families take responsibility for output. They meet state quotas first. They keep the surplus. Production jumps. Instead of punishing the experiment, the party scales it. This becomes the household responsibility system. Collective farming fades fast. Rural productivity rises sharply. Labor is freed from the land. Millions move toward towns and factories. Small private business is tolerated. Street markets grow. Workshops appear. Services expand. A mixed system emerges. It is still socialist rule, but market incentives are now inside it. China then opens to the world. Special economic zones are created on the coast. Foreign firms get tax breaks and easier rules. Shenzhen becomes the symbol. It grows from a small town to a megacity. Foreign investment brings capital. It also brings know-how. China adds a powerful advantage. It has huge labor supply, and wages are low. That combination is irresistible for manufacturers. The party also redesigns governance. Provinces keep more revenue. Local officials compete for growth. Promotion depends on performance. The whole country becomes a tournament. At the same time, China shifts geopolitically. Relations with the Soviet Union sour earlier. Border clashes happen in 1969. By the late 1970s, China looks west. The US and China normalize relations in 1979. Students and engineers go abroad. Technology and expertise flow back. A major settlement follows in Hong Kong. Britain agrees to return Hong Kong in 1997. A a special model is promised. One country, two systems. Hong Kong keeps its legal and financial structure for decades. It becomes a key gateway for finance. Capital can enter China through it. China's export engine accelerates. Factories scale fast. Supply chains cluster. Ports modernize. Cities explode in size. But China is not trying to be a market for others. It is trying to become the world's factory. Rules encourage learning from foreigners. Joint ventures are common early on. Foreign firms bring technology. Chinese partners learn operations and management. Copying becomes part of catch-up. Sometimes it is legal imitation. Sometimes it is outright theft. Either way, the speed is the point. China then moves beyond copying. It starts spending heavily on research. R&D investment rises for decades. In several sectors, Chinese firms reach the frontier. High-speed rail is a clear example. China buys train tech first. It adapts and scales it. It builds the largest network on Earth. It becomes a major exporter of rail equipment. Similar stories happen in electronics. They happen in batteries. They happen in telecom. They happen in solar. Eventually, the West reacts. Trade tensions intensify. Tariffs rise in the late 2010s. Tech controls expand in the 2020s. Restrictions target sensitive sectors. Supply chains begin to diversify. Some firms shift production to Vietnam. Some shift to Mexico. Some shift to Bangladesh. At the same time, China faces internal constraints. Household consumption is relatively low as a share of GDP. Investment and construction dominate. Debt rises. Property booms create ghost districts. Some projects outpace real demand. Demographics also turn. The one-child policy began in 1979. It slows population growth. It also accelerates aging later. It contributes to a gender imbalance. Rules relax in 2015 and again later. But birth rates do not rebound quickly. The labor force tightens. Wages rise. China loses some low-end cost advantage. Geopolitics adds another pressure. China expands overseas lending and infrastructure. This includes ports and transport corridors. It is often framed as the Belt and Road. Critics warn about debt traps. Supporters call it development finance. Either way, it increases competition for influence. So where does this leave China now? China is richer than ever before. Its industry is deeply embedded in global trade. Its firms compete at the top in key sectors, but growth is harder at the frontier. Copying is not enough anymore. Innovation is expensive. External resistance is stronger. Population is aging. Internal consumption remains a challenge. The story is still unfolding. China could stabilize as a superpower, or it could slow under structural weight. Either outcome will shape the century, because the world economy now runs through Beijing, and the next chapter will not be quiet.